Shattered Silence, A Journey of Survival and Healing, by Nanice Munoz, formerly Nicola Nooks. Chapter 12. Honoring Your Parents. What it means to honor your parents. Honor is a word that carries immense weight, especially in the context of family relationships. Culturally, honoring parents often means showing respect, gratitude, and obedience. In many societies, particularly in Jamaican culture, this respect can translate into unwavering loyalty, silence about familial conflicts, and a lifelong commitment to care for parents, regardless of personal circumstances. It is a concept deeply rooted in tradition, shaping how children are raised and how they perceive their role within the family structure. From a biblical perspective, however, honor goes beyond cultural expectations. The Bible commands us to honor our father and mother, as seen in Exodus 20 verse 12. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. This command is reiterated throughout Scripture, emphasizing the importance of respect and gratitude for the role parents play in our lives. Yet, biblical honor does not demand blind obedience or passive acceptance of mistreatment. In Ephesians 6 verse 4, parents are reminded of their responsibility. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. This balance reveals that honoring is a two-way street, requiring mutual respect and accountability between parents and children. In this chapter, I seek to redefine what it truly means to honor one's parents, bridging the gap between cultural traditions and biblical truth. Honoring parents does not mean staying silent in the face of abuse, nor does it mean carrying the weight of pain without seeking healing. Parents are entrusted by God with the sacred responsibility to nurture and protect their children, not to harm them under the guise of authority. Writing this memoir brought me face to face with difficult questions about honor. At one point, I hesitated, wondering if telling my story would dishonor my mother or other family members. The cultural narrative that discourages speaking out was deeply ingrained in me, making me question whether sharing my truth could be seen as an act of betrayal. But over time, I realized that silence perpetuates cycles of pain. Breaking that silence was not an act of dishonor. It was an act of courage, faith, and a commitment to healing. I came to understand that honoring parents does not mean ignoring past wounds, but rather confronting the truth with grace and a desire for restoration. This chapter is dedicated to exploring the true meaning of honoring parents, a definition rooted in love, truth, and godly principles. It is my hope to encourage others to seek healing, embrace their voice, and walk in the freedom that comes from breaking unhealthy cycles. Honoring parents, as God intended, involves accountability, respect, and forgiveness. It requires holding on to truth while extending grace and allowing space for healing, both for ourselves and for those we love. The cultural perspective. Silence as honor in Jamaican culture. In Jamaican culture, the concept of honoring one's parents is deeply rooted in a code of silence. Children are often expected to carry the weight of parental actions, good or bad, without complaint. To speak out against a parent, particularly about harm or neglect, is considered the ultimate dishonor, a betrayal that reflects poorly on the child rather than the parent. This unspoken rule traps many in a cycle of pain, unable to confront their wounds or seek healing. Growing up in Jamaica, I witnessed how this cultural norm shaped everyday life. A child who dared to express their feelings about mistreatment was often met with rebuke rather than support. Big people business, as it's often called, was strictly off-limits to children, even when that business directly affected their well-being. Parents held absolute authority. Their actions were deemed beyond reproach. In such an environment, children learned to suppress their pain, bury their emotions, and accept their reality in silence. This cultural perspective is especially evident in the way abuse is justified or minimized. A parent disciplining harshly might defend their actions by saying, "A fee me pick me can do what me want," meaning, "It's my child, I can do what I want." The underlying message is clear. Parents wield unchecked power, and children have no voice. This belief perpetuates cycles of harm, as children who grow up in such environments often carry unresolved trauma into adulthood. One poignant example of this dynamic played out publicly a few years ago when a Jamaican man, known for his talent on a popular platform, spoke out about the abuse he endured from his mother. Despite not growing up with her or benefiting from her care, she sought reconciliation with him after he won a significant amount of money. He chose to break his silence, detailing the neglect and abuse he had suffered. In response, his mother defended herself, claiming he had been rude as a child, a familiar narrative used to justify harsh treatment. His decision to speak out sparked widespread debate. Some criticized him for airing family business in public, accusing him of dishonoring his mother. Others praised his courage, recognizing the importance of transparency and healing. While the conflict seemed to subside over time, it remains unclear whether true reconciliation ever occurred. This incident highlighted the cultural tension between the expectation of silence and the necessity of addressing past wounds. The silence enforced by Jamaican culture comes at a great cost. Children raised without the freedom to express their pain often carry that silence into adulthood, where it manifests as unresolved anger, depression, or difficulty forming healthy relationships. The belief that speaking out is dishonorable traps individuals in cycles of shame, isolating them and invalidating their experiences. For me, breaking this silence was a critical step toward healing. It wasn't an act of rebellion or dishonor. It was an act of survival. I realized that staying silent only perpetuated the pain and allowed harmful narratives to persist unchecked. Speaking out became an act of courage, a way to reclaim my voice and challenge the cultural norms that had silenced me for so long. The idea that honoring parents means remaining silent about their wrongdoings must be re-examined. True honor is rooted in love, accountability, and respect. It is not rooted in fear or blind loyalty. Parents, too, are called to honor their children by nurturing, protecting, and guiding them in ways that reflect God's love. When they fail in these responsibilities, silence does not serve anyone. It only deepens the wounds. Ephesians 4 verse 25 says, "Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body." While this verse speaks to relationships within the body of Christ, it also applies to family dynamics. Speaking the truth is a vital step toward fostering healing and reconciliation. As I share my story, I hope to encourage others who feel trapped in this cultural expectation of silence to find their voice. Breaking the silence is not easy. It requires strength, faith, and often the support of others. But it is a necessary step toward healing, not just for the individual, but for future generations. By addressing the pain and speaking truth, we can begin to dismantle cycles of harm and create a legacy of love, accountability, and understanding. Breaking the silence. Speaking out is courage. Speaking out is not an act of dishonor. It is an act of courage, a step toward healing, and a way to uplift others who may be enduring similar struggles. The decision to write this memoir was not an easy one. For years, I wrestled with whether sharing my story would implicate others or be seen as dishonoring those involved. Jamaican culture, with its deeply ingrained expectation of silence, weighed heavily on my mind. Could I speak my truth without being judged as disloyal or ungrateful? These questions lingered, holding me back from what I now recognize as a divine calling. For years, I received prophecies about writing books, affirmations that my life's experiences were meant to serve a greater purpose. These were not vague, generalized messages. They were clear, direct confirmations that my testimony could be a vessel for change. The first book that came to mind was a memoir. Yet I hesitated, questioning whether I was ready to confront the past and commit it to paper. I feared that sharing my experiences might reopen wounds that others were not prepared to face, and perhaps wounds that I wasn't sure I was ready to fully examine myself. What ultimately pushed me forward was the realization that this story is not just about me. It is about ministry. As prophesied, I came to understand that young people were waiting for my testimony. My experiences, painful as they were, held the power to inspire, encourage, and guide others who might feel voiceless and alone. Keeping silent would have meant withholding a gift that God intended for others. This memoir became a way to serve, to minister, and to remind others that healing is possible. Writing this memoir also became a way to redefine what it means to honor others. True honor is not found in silence or in the suppression of truth. It is found in love, in respect, and in the courage to address what has been broken so that it can be restored. When parents harm their children, whether intentionally or unintentionally, silence only allows the harm to fester. By speaking out, I am not seeking to dishonor anyone. Rather, I hope to create a space for healing for myself, for others who have endured similar experiences, and perhaps even for those who caused the harm. This process of writing has been an act of courage. It has challenged my fears and pushed me to confront societal norms that have long silenced so many. But this is not about placing blame or pointing fingers. It is about reclaiming my voice and my narrative. It is about showing others that they, too, can face their past and find a path toward healing. As I reflect on this journey, I've come to understand that breaking the silence is an act of service. Many, especially young adults, are carrying the emotional scars of their upbringing while grappling with cultural expectations that demand silence and submission. By sharing my story, I hope to offer a roadmap for healing and a reminder that they are not alone. Proverbs 31 verses 8-9 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy." While this passage often refers to advocating for justice, it also calls us to give a voice to those silenced by societal norms. Speaking out about personal pain and injustice is a way to honor this call. It allows me to stand not just for myself, but for others silently enduring similar struggles. This memoir is a testament to the power of resilience and the necessity of courage. Confronting the past is never easy, especially when doing so challenges cultural norms and risks backlash. But it is necessary. Healing begins when we acknowledge what has been broken and take steps to mend it. Silence may feel safer, but it does nothing to address the pain or create meaningful change. Romans 8 verse 28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This verse has been a source of strength for me throughout this journey. It reassures me that even the painful parts of my story have a purpose. God can use every experience, no matter how difficult, to bring about healing and growth, not just for me, but for others as well. To those grappling with perhaps to speak out about their own experiences, I encourage you to seek God's guidance and trust his timing. Speaking out is not about seeking revenge or validation. It is about finding freedom and allowing others to find freedom through your testimony. It is about breaking cycles of pain and building a legacy of healing, truth, and love. A sacred responsibility. The role of parents are entrusted with the sacred responsibility to love, nurture, and protect their children. This responsibility is not merely a cultural expectation or societal norm. It is in fact a divine mandate. In Ephesians 6 verse 4, the Bible instructs, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." This verse highlights the importance of parenting with care and intention, avoiding harm while guiding children toward growth and righteousness. When parents fulfill their role with love and integrity, they create a foundation of trust, security, and emotional well-being for their children. However, when this responsibility is abused through neglect, harsh discipline, or emotional manipulation, it leaves lasting scars. Children raised in such environments often carry wounds that affect their self-esteem, their relationships, and their ability to trust others. The impact of parental abuse runs deep, shaping how children see themselves and the world around them. In many cultures, including Jamaican culture, parental authority is often viewed as absolute. The parent's word is final, and any questioning or criticism is considered disrespectful. This dynamic can foster an environment where abuse is justified under the guise of discipline or tough love. However, authority is not a license to harm, but it is a responsibility to guide and nurture with wisdom and compassion. The Bible makes it clear that parents are called to reflect God's love in their parenting. Psalm 103 verse 13 says, "As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him." Compassion is the cornerstone of godly parenting. It requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to prioritize a child's well-being over pride or frustration. Unfortunately, some parents misuse their authority, prioritizing control or cultural expectations over the emotional and spiritual health of their children. This misuse of power often manifests in physical, verbal, or emotional abuse. While discipline is a necessary part of parenting, it must always be balanced with love and respect. Discipline that shames or harms a child violates the trust that God has placed in parents to care for his children. The consequences of such abuse are far-reaching. Many adults carry unresolved pain from childhood, struggling to reconcile the love they feel for their parents with the hurt they endured. This internal conflict can lead to strained relationships, difficulty in setting boundaries, and a cycle of pain that continues across generations. Yet, healing is possible, not only for the child who was hurt, but also for the parent who caused the harm. Accountability is a critical step in breaking this cycle. Parents must be willing to acknowledge their mistakes and seek forgiveness, both from God and from their children. This act of humility and accountability is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of strength and love. It reflects a commitment to healing and to restoring the trust that may have been broken. In Matthew 18 verse 6, Jesus issues a stark warning. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. This powerful imagery underscores the gravity of a parent's responsibility. Children are not possessions to be controlled. They are individuals to be cherished, nurtured, and guided. Healing within family relationships requires effort from both parents and children. It begins with open communication, where both parties feel safe to express their feelings without fear of judgment or retaliation. Healing also requires a willingness to forgive, not to excuse the harm that was done, but to release the burden of resentment and create space for reconciliation. Parents who have caused harm, whether intentionally or unintentionally, have an opportunity to model God's grace by seeking forgiveness and making amends. Likewise, children who have been hurt can find freedom in forgiveness, even if full reconciliation is not possible. As I reflect on the role of parents, I am reminded of Proverbs 22 verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. This verse reminds us of the enduring impact of parenting. The way a child is raised lays the foundation for their future, for better or worse. Parents have the sacred responsibility to sow seeds of love, faith, and wisdom, knowing that these seeds will bear fruit for generations to come. Ultimately, parenting reflects God's relationship with His children. It is a role that requires humility, patience, and steady commitment to love. When parents fulfill this role with integrity, they not only honor their children but also honor the God who entrusted them with this sacred responsibility. Personal reflection. Writing the memoir. Writing this memoir has been a journey of faith and self-discovery, one that challenged me to confront my past with honesty while leaning on God for strength. The decision to share my story was not made lightly. It came with moments of doubt and countless prayers for guidance. I sought clarity through prayer, trusting that if it was God's will, He would give me the strength to share my experiences for a greater purpose. I understood that telling my truth could stir uncomfortable emotions, not just for me, but for others involved. Yet, as I prayed and sought clarity, I realized that this process wasn't solely about revisiting my pain. It was about uncovering the lessons God had been teaching me all along. The act of writing became deeply reflective. As I pieced together the chapters of my life, I began to notice patterns, moments where God's grace carried me through even when I couldn't recognize it at the time. Every tear, every struggle, and every unanswered question became part of a larger narrative, one that revealed His plan for my life. This memoir became less about recounting events and more about aligning with God's purpose for me, to use my story to inspire and encourage others. One of the greatest tests of faith during this process was confronting the possibility of criticism or rejection. In Jamaican culture, speaking out about family struggles is often met with resistance, especially when it involves parents. I wrestled with the fear of being misunderstood, labeled as disrespectful, or causing further rifts. Doubt crept in, and I often questioned whether I was making the right choice. But in those moments of uncertainty, I remembered the prophecies spoken over my life, words that declared young people would find healing and hope through my testimony. Those prophecies became my anchor, reminding me that my story was part of a bigger picture, far beyond my personal struggles. Amid this inner turmoil, I reached out to a trusted friend, a leader in the church and a social worker, to seek her advice. I asked her, "Do you think I should share my story?" Without hesitation, she responded, "Yes, you need to share your story. It's your story." Her words resonated deeply, even though she didn't elaborate on the impact my story might have on others. I knew in my heart that sharing my journey could bring healing and hope. Her affirmation gave me the courage I needed to move forward. It reminded me that what I had endured wasn't just for me, it was for others, especially young people who might find themselves in the same place I once was. As I continued to write, I wrestled with the question of how much to share. I turned to my husband for his thoughts, unsure of whether expressing certain feelings or details would be appropriate. His response was always steady and reassuring. "It's your experience, it's part of your story." His words encouraged me to embrace the truth of my journey, even when it felt uncomfortable to face. Writing became not just about recounting events, but about honoring my experiences, no matter how painful or difficult they were to relive. The support I received from both my friend and my husband reminded me that this was my truth, and it was worth telling. Their encouragement gave me the strength to press on and to trust that my story could make a difference. The writing process also deepened my understanding of forgiveness and grace. Revisiting moments of hurt forced me to confront emotions I thought I had moved past. But instead of reopening wounds, I found myself leaning into God's promise of healing. Through His Word, I was reminded that forgiveness doesn't erase the pain, but it releases its power to control us. Forgiveness allowed me to approach this memoir with a spirit of reconciliation, not bitterness. Reflecting on my calling, I realized that sharing my story was more than an act of obedience, it was an act of trust. Trust in God's timing, trust in His purpose, and trust that the lives He wanted to touch through my words would be reached. Writing this memoir became my way of saying yes to His will, even when the path seems unclear. Ministering through experience. Throughout my life, I've come to understand that my story isn't just my own. It's a testament to the transformative power of God's grace. While my experiences often felt isolating and painful, I now recognize them as stepping stones toward a greater purpose. Sharing my struggles isn't merely about recounting hardship. It's about revealing how God works through even our darkest moments to shape us into vessels of hope for others. I've learned that when we are transparent about our challenges, we give others permission to do the same. Vulnerability becomes the bridge that connects hearts, creating a space where healing can begin, not just for the one who shares, but for those who listen. It is in those moments of shared humanity that God's presence becomes most evident, reminding us that we are never truly alone. I often think about the young people I've encountered, those who feel weighed down by burdens they believe are too heavy to carry. When I share my story, my prayer is that they see themselves reflected in it. I want them to know they are not alone, that their pain is not the end of their story. No matter how bleak their circumstances may seem, God has a plan for their lives. He has taken my pain, my struggles, and even my triumphs, and used them to mold me into someone who can speak truth into the lives of others. My journey is proof that no experience is wasted when placed in God's hands. I've come to realize that my ministry isn't just found in the words I speak, but in the experiences that have shaped me. Each step of my journey has been part of a bigger picture, one that serves to lead others toward healing, purpose, and hope in Christ. By being transparent and honest about my own struggles, I hope to inspire others, especially young people, to trust in God's timing and His perfect plan for their lives. There is hope, even in the darkest moments, and God is always at work, turning our trials into testimonies. Conclusion: honoring through truth and growth. Honoring our parents is a concept deeply rooted in respect, love, and understanding. True honor, however, goes beyond passive compliance or remaining silent in the face of harm. It calls for an honest acknowledgement of our experiences, a willingness to confront the truth, and the courage to break free from cycles of dysfunction. On my journey, I have learned that honoring parents authentically does not mean accepting abuse, ignoring the pain of the past, or stifling our voices to maintain a facade of harmony. Rather, it involves recognizing the complexities of our relationships, acknowledging the hurt, and choosing to heal. Authentic honor begins with confronting the truth of what we have lived through, how those experiences have shaped us, and how they can propel us toward growth. Honoring parents in this way does not equate to dishonoring them. Instead, it reflects a profound reverence for our own journey, our pain, and our resilience. For many, this process requires unlearning harmful patterns that may have persisted for generations. As we work to shed these patterns, we create the opportunity for healthier relationships, not just with our parents, but with ourselves and those around us. Breaking these cycles of harm is far from easy. It demands immense courage and vulnerability. It also requires forgiveness, not as an act of excusing the wrongs committed, but as a way of releasing the past's grip on our present. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, allowing us to step into a future unclouded by bitterness or regret. Reconciliation, while not always possible in the way we might hope, can still offer profound freedom when both parties commit to healing. Even if relationships are not fully restored, the act of pursuing peace grants us the ability to move forward, untethered from unresolved pain. The hope I carry is this: no matter how painful our past may be, we always have the power to grow, transform, and create new legacies. By embracing truth, extending forgiveness, and committing to personal growth, we can break generational cycles of harm and establish a foundation of love and understanding for future generations. True honor lies in becoming the fullest version of who we are meant to be. In doing so, we not only honor ourselves, but also offer a new vision of hope and healing to those who come after us. Honoring our parents is not about blind obedience or enduring mistreatment. Instead, it involves recognizing their role in our lives while maintaining our integrity and well-being. As Exodus 20 verse 12 reminds us, "Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." This command emphasizes respect and reverence, but does not require us to accept harm or neglect our own needs. Similarly, Proverbs 22 verse 6 teaches us, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." This wisdom reflects the importance of nurturing others with love and guidance. True honor, then, is rooted in love, care, and responsibility. That concludes Chapter 12. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for Chapter 13 in the next video.